All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited to talk to you about games and gamification. I want to also let you guys know that I have two of my colleagues on today, Jennifer Hassel and Joanne Vanstein. They're going to be answering questions in the chat, so please put any questions you want in there. There's also some polls. So let's get this thing kicked off, right? So today we are talking about 8 ways to funkify your training with next-gen gamification. How do you motivate, activate, and celebrate your teams? A couple things I want to first start off with is by saying anyone who caught Amy Cuddy's presentation earlier, she was awesome. So sit up straight, be strong. We are going to have some fun today. All right, so let's move on. Again, I'm Jamie Mcdonald. I'm the EVP of Customer Success of the Game Agency and the Training Arcade. I've been in the tech business for the last 10 years or so, and prior to that, I was in the music industry for about 15 years. I'd like to introduce you to our founders. So these are the 3 guys who started our business. They came from Atari and other game publishing companies. So everything we do is about games. It's really deep in our DNA. From inception back in 2007, when we started our business, we really focused on custom game solutions, and it's still a really big part of our business. But a custom game could be anything that a client wants. They could come to us for building out a game-based training app. It could be a simulation. It could be a game for patients, for doctors, for sales training, really anything. We also decided about 3.5 years ago to build a platform called the Training Arcade. This is a GIY. I call it a GIY. It's a game it yourself authoring tool. It allows you to put your own content into a game very quickly and push the games out to your learners anywhere they are. The idea behind the games is that they can really, of course, reinforce what it is that you're doing and are a nice complement to your training. In our platform, there are 9 game types at the moment. One of them is Jeopardy. We have the official rights to the Jeopardy brand for training. So we built it to be really authentic. So it looks and feels like the game show that you guys know and love. And I'm super excited to announce to you guys, you're one of the first to hear this, that we just got the rights from Sony to also build a Wheel of Fortune training game. So look for that in January of 2021. But we're really here today to talk about arcades, gamification, right? And arcades is a tool that you can, to bring gamification to life. But we're going to talk about all the motivating factors that really take games to the next level, which is what gamification is all about. So before I start, I just want to mention a couple polls. I went over to our sponsor page earlier this morning, and there were a couple polls on the sponsor page. One of them was, do you currently use games? And 53% said yes, and there was over 27%, I believe, that said that they are definitely exploring the idea of using games. But interestingly, one of the other poll questions was, what do you find the most frustrating about training? And as of this morning when I looked, I saw that there was 21% said that their training lacked engagement. 21% said their people fear new technology. 21% said that there was a lack of participation by their trainees, and 27% said there was too much content. So hopefully, as I walk you through games and gamification, you'll see the benefit that these really can bring. The idea behind games, of course, is that they're really fun and engaging, right? They drive people back again and again, which means that they're spending more time with your content, and ultimately, what that's going to do is improve your performance. And of course, that hopefully will turn into more productivity and better ROI for your company. But it's not just about e-learning games, right? Sometimes you're doing things on virtual calls. In today's day and age, everybody's on Zoom or some other video conference platform. So you want to be able to mix it up and bring games into your virtual meetings or your live events when people go back to doing that. Data is also really key. Being able to measure how effective your training is so important, and games can really help you do that. And we're going to get into data at, a little bit later in my presentation. But ideally, what you want to do is when you're thinking about a game strategy, you want to be able to provide games to your learners anywhere they are, right? Mobile, tablet, desktop, being able to give them a lot of flexibility. And of course, the goal is to make your trainers, really be the heroes there. We always like to say the 3 C's. You want to be able to connect your audience, which has never been more important than today. You want to get them to collaborate, and of course, competition, which is what we're going to get into for gamification. So on our agenda today, we're going to talk about a few different things. One is, why are games so important in today's training? We're going to go over the difference between game-based learning strategy and gamification, because that's always something I find people have a little bit of confusion on. And then we're going to talk about 8 different ways that you can gamify. Let's take into account the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation that people often have. And then again, we're going to measure, your success using data. So, Right now, what's going on in the world, we are all so distracted. Most people are still working from home. Sometimes your dog is barking or your cat runs across your computer or your kid tells you that they want you to give them lunch right when you're about to start a call, right? So there's tons of distractions. But besides that, there's also social media and texting and emails, and you're being pulled into so many different directions. You need to find ways to stimulate your audience, give them the feedback that they need, especially now, right? You're not in the same room with them. You can't actually physically talk to somebody at work and be there in person with them. So you need to find new ways to kind of sustain their focus and get them to improve. 50% of employees out there are millennials, and they're really anxious, right? They're constantly worried about what's happening with COVID. They're not, again, in person in front of their bosses to get that recognition or attention that they need. And they're having a hard time connecting with their colleagues. So let's talk about why games can be really effective. They do provide that higher order thinking skills. Oftentimes when you're in the midst of a game, it depends on the game, of course, but you have to strategically think about what is the right answer that's going to get you down to the ultimate objective you're trying to achieve. You need to do some interpretation and analysis. Oftentimes you have to plan. You have to really think out your strategy or your decision making. And if you don't do well, you need to adapt. You may need to go back and try again, and hopefully you learn from your mistakes the first time. And then they also really help with soft skills. So when you're playing through a game experience, there's that emotional intelligence that you're tapping into. Oftentimes, you also want to be able to communicate better. A lot of soft skills is overcoming objections when you're talking to somebody, or navigating through a really difficult conversation, or being in customer service where you're talking to people all the time. You have to problem solve. You have to think on your feet. You have to really be able to answer in the right way. And then if you can do this in a collaborative way, of course, that makes it even better. So I like to talk about brains and games being the perfect marriage. The first thing about games is that they really do allow you to fail safely, right? If you play a game, let's say it's different. There are different games out there. So there are some games where maybe there is a game where you only get one chance to answer a question, but at the end of the game, you can hit that play again button. If you didn't see your score high enough, you weren't pleased with how you did, maybe your name on the leaderboard wasn't up there, you can hit the play again button and try again. In other cases, you may play a game where a question comes back around a second time or a third time, giving you another opportunity to try. So they do allow you to fail safely. They're really fun. So it's not a big deal for you to say, yes, I want to keep playing. Ultimately, what that's doing is it's reinforcing your knowledge because of that repetition. And in turn, hopefully that's going to improve your knowledge retention. So why is it the perfect ROI when you combine training with games? You've got more engaged learners, their attention and retention is there, they're focused more on the task at hand. I always like to kind of use this analogy. When you drive a car, you can text. Obviously, you never should text while you're driving, but it's possible, right? But you could never play a game while you're driving because games really do take so much focus, and it kind of lets you tune everything else out while you're in that process. In turn, what it's going to do is it's going to drive your confidence, your performance overall, and of course your company's ROI. So let's get to the fun here. So how do you FUNkify your training? The reason why we chose this and we came up with this title of Funk is I went to school in New Orleans. I absolutely love that city. Everything about that city screams fun and funk to me. So we're going to talk about how do you make your training more fun and engaging while also providing feedback that your learners need. In just a second, I'm going to ask you guys, if you want to go to the session poll and answer one of the first questions there. But before we do that, let's just talk about this for a second. There is the power of play. There are so many things that get people excited and having fun, right? That could be anything. It could be spending time with your family, getting outside and getting some fresh air, a bike ride, going to see live music in the sun, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm, super bummed that I can't really do that right now due to COVID, skiing, reading a good book. And then on the other side, there's all of those other things like seeing your name in lights, right? You want to get up at the top of the leaderboard. You want your team to beat the next team. You want to do really well on a test or pass a course or solve a puzzle. Ultimately, you also want to earn some prizes, right? I mean, even the app that ATD is using right now is Gamified. If you guys go over to the Gamified section, you can see, based on all the things that you're doing, interacting with different people throughout this conference, you're gaining on the leaderboard. So, the ability to earn prizes or cash or merch or gift cards. All right, so I would love to ask you guys to go quickly over to the poll. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to answer one of the poll questions, and then I'm going to kind of just reveal what the results were. So I'm just going to give you a break for 30 seconds. And actually what I'll do is I'll pop over to that poll so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Oops, here we go. You just sign in. Sorry, guys. Let's get over to my agenda. All right, hopefully you guys are all answering the poll. I just want to give you some live results. Okay, here we go. So hopefully you guys answer this. Please rate your interest in using games as part of your learning strategy. It looks like so far 50% of you said you definitely want to add more games. 41% said you haven't used them yet, but you want to start, which is awesome. 5% of you said that you don't think you can afford them, which I'm here to tell you absolutely can. And then 7% right now are not sure that it's right for your strategy. Okay, great. We'll get to the next poll result in a minute, but I just wanted to touch on that, and let's go back to this presentation. Okay, here we go, guys. All right. So now let's get into two types of play, right? There's game-based learning and there's gamification, and oftentimes those are confused. So let's talk about this, what games are exactly. I have a quote here from George Fan. Any of you who don't know who George Fan is or who don't know what Plants and Zombies is, he is the game designer behind a game called Plants and Zombies. So his quote is, "Games are all about learning. You're discovering new techniques and adapting to new challenges. Games stop being fun once you figure everything out, and they stop being fun once you stop learning." So I just thought that was such an awesome, inspiring quote. But what exactly is game-based learning? Game-based learning is actually using a specific game to obtain an outcome, right? You're putting people into a game or a real situation, perhaps a scenarios or simulation style game, to achieve a certain outcome. They're, integrating with all your content, and the idea is that they need to get through that particular game, and they can do it safely. Like I was describing earlier, because games provide that ability for you to fail safely, they can come back and around again. I always say games do three things. Number one is they bring the fun, right? They make what you're doing more engaging and fun. They also provide a practice playground. Give your learners a vehicle to go in and constantly practice with your content, again and again. And then the last part, of course, is the data, which I mentioned we'll talk about in a second. So from an instructional design perspective, there is a design process that you need to think about when you're building a game. And oftentimes instructional designers, they don't really want to mess with the content. Sometimes they just want to add on a game to the very end. And not create a big shift, right? And then there's the subject matter experts who are also, they really want to present their content to you in a specific way. But when you think about game-based learning, you want to kind of turn that on its head. You want to take the content and provide it in such a way that it is going to be scripted and allow people to, get really deep into the content itself in order for them to kind of solve the case or get to their final objective in the learning. The other part about games is that there are a lot of different game types out there, right? There are tons of games. There's custom games. There's games that tons of other companies have built. And then there's lots of games that I want to show you here that are actually in our platform. The idea is that not every game is suited to the content that you have. You want to mix it up. So for example, we have a detective game. Detective is a game that's all about problem solving. So you have to solve a case or maybe multiple case files. You're presented with suspects and evidence, and you kind of have to link pieces of information together in order to solve your case. Then there's a game like Scenarios, which I'll touch on again on the next slide. This is more about situational learning. You're putting people into a real life situation where they need to make decisions, and based on their decisions, they may be sent down different branching paths. You've got a game like Recall, which is more about visual learning, where maybe your learners watch a video or an image and then it disappears, and you ask them a slew of questions about your content. Or a sorted game. Sorted is a game that's all about creating a grid of content. And then you have, you have to drop different pieces of content into the respective grid in order to solve that problem. Or Scramble, which is like a word puzzle game. Or Jump. Jump is a game that's really fun and addictive. It's all about, moving this character along where they're jumping from platform to platform. And when they get land on a platform with a question mark, they get served a question. And they also have to avoid getting hit by things that are falling. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can use different types of games to map to either your content, your performance objectives. Maybe it's who your audience is. In some cases, you may have millennials in your, who you're training. Maybe they're incoming new hires, or maybe you have an older audience, or maybe you're doing something virtually versus doing something live or through e-learning. So you have to kind of take all of those things into consideration when you're picking the right game type. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into Scenarios. And the reason why I'm doing this is because when I looked at an earlier poll today on our sponsor page, one of the questions that we asked is what kind of games are most people interested in? And we found that the most common answer so far has been simulations or kind of scenarios, putting people into, a decision-making branching path where they're going to see the outcomes of those decisions. So again, this is often all about soft skills, your sales training needs, your customer service, decision-making, how do you overcome objections? And you can really bring these simulations or scenario games to life with different content. It starts off first by kind of coming up with what is that script, and what are those branching paths? If somebody answers this way, where am I going to send them next? If they answer this way, maybe that was the right answer. Let's move them along the path. But you can also think about your content. When you make a really good game, it's not just about the content, it's about the story and it's about the creative. So when we think about doing a custom solution, we always think about what does it look like from the instructional design perspective? How is this going to, be written and read by the learners? You've got your game design. How is it going to function? You've got your graphic design. What kind of assets are you going to use to bring your games to life? And of course, then there's the software development that comes into play to building your game. But these are three very different examples. So you've got on the right here, this particular scenario's game was built with live action video where we had a script and we hired an actress and we recorded her with a green screen and then we cut it up into little snippets and we dropped those videos into the game. This was actually built using a external software called Vyond. Many of you out there are probably familiar with the Vyond software. We went over there, we built some fun animated videos, and then we dropped those videos into our scenarios game to create that. Over here on the left is a totally different example. This is one where we used hand-drawn animation, where the client wanted us to use kind of a comic book style with speech bubbles. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can bring your games to life with the creative assets that you have. Then there's recall. So a game like this is more about building muscle memory, right? So this is kind of like, this gets used a lot for memorization or identification, where you look at an image or a video and then it disappears and you're tasked with trying to recall what you saw. So this is also good for like step-by-step processes. Maybe somebody watches a video and then you have to ask them a question like, what would be the next step based on what you saw? And then the next one I'll just touch on is Jeopardy. So, the reason why we went after this brand and why we went to get the license from Sony is because we knew that the Jeopardy game was being used a lot in the world of training. And we wanted to make a game that was really authentic. So we built this game to look and feel very much like the TV show. It actually has two modes. It has a single player mode, which allows you to build a game and you can download the game as a SCORM package and load it into your LMS for learners to play there, or you can embed it into a storyline course or whatever kind of e-learning authoring tools you're using. You can use it on virtual, events, but being able to actually have a host who could be like Alex Trebek, let's say, and run the game for you on your Zoom call or your WebEx call or Microsoft Teams is a really great option to drive that layer of engagement and connection that you're really hoping to get from your audiences. So there's a lot of different game styles out there, but I want to really just kind of quickly define custom games versus off-the-shelf games. Custom games are, of course, you coming up with the idea of a brand new game style, or maybe it's an immersive simulation that you're looking to drive specific performance objectives. You want to hit certain goals. And of course, there's a budget. Unfortunately, with game development, it's not as inexpensive as off-the-shelf games. If there are off-the-shelf products out there like the Training Arcade or other tools that you can find, typically that allows you to build games yourself very fast, deploy them to your learners anywhere at a more affordable price, and have a lot of flexibility. But one of the things I want to mention is what's cool about us having the Training Arcade now is that technology stack actually allows us to leverage the tech to build a custom solution. So when clients come to us and say, hey, could you build us this game, rather than us having to start from scratch and build out the registration engine and the leaderboard and all the analytics like we used to do, we can often create a custom solution that leverages the technology from the Training Arcade, which it makes the budget lower and it's a faster turnaround to present a game-based solution. Now I want to get into thinking about who your audience is, because it's really key. You may have a variety of different people in your organization, but you have to think of them differently because they're all people are different, right? So we've kind of broken this up into 4 groups, and I'm sure there's many, many more, but let's talk about your socializer. This is somebody who really likes, relationships and social status. They want to collaborate with people. They're having fun when they compete. Then you've got the free spirit. This is someone who wants to do something maybe that's a little bit more custom, and they want to be able to unlock content over time and have branching paths. They want to see what their decisions are going to, how they're going to affect them and go back and try again. There's your achiever. This is someone who wants to level up over time. They love quests and competition, and they want to be the one who masters the content all the way through to the end. And then you've got your philanthropist. This is someone who's into gifting and getting rewards and that social status and collaborating. You know, this is probably someone who's more into doing team play and having an ultimate purpose in the end. So we're going to get into gamification now. This is what we're here to talk about, of course. So gamification is really taking all those game elements that we just talked about and bringing in motivating factors, the points, the rewards, all the things that are going to excite people, the leaderboards and prizes that are going to earn. So the quote that I have here from Oxford University Press says, gamification is the application of typical elements of game playing, like points, score, and competition, etc., to other areas of activity, typically as an online marketing technique to encourage engagement with a product or service. And obviously, this isn't just about products or services, this is about training as well. It really takes the learner to the next level. It takes games to the next level. You know, you are getting people super excited, and I'm going to talk about in just a second, tapping into both their intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Ultimately, the goal behind using gamification is that you want to repeat what people are doing. You want them to come back regularly because they're having fun, because they're earning, because they're collaborating, and make sure that that content is going to stick into their long-term memory. So let's talk about what this is. Just a few things. This is the use of game elements, right? It's not, you could have a game without gamification, but gamification are added elements that are going to help kind of provide feedback along the way and get people super excited. They can earn points, badges, there are streaks, there's rewards, there's achievements that they're earning over time. And then there's the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, which, you know, is in both forms for gamification, right? It doesn't always have to look like a game. A gamified element could just be a progress bar. One of our game scenarios actually has what we call a tug of war meter. And when you're building a game, you can label the right and left side of the meter. And so what happens is when you have a meter like that, as the person is playing through the scenario, they're going to see that meter move in either direction, giving them an indication of how they're performing. So you're really giving them, a hint into how their progress is. And with gamification, it's all about tracking progress. So for instructional designers out there, gamification is really the ability to drive that extra social learning that's going to make motivation, a bigger part of the overall learning experience. It's, pumping up that traditional page turner to get people excited. So that's the best of both worlds.
Jamie,
yeah.
I hate to interrupt you. Please. Everybody is so excited about what you're talking about, but there are a few comments asking you to slow down a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. And I do realize. Okay. Big apologies. I also did see Amy Cuddy's presentation about how the better presenter is the presenter who slows down. So I got that message. I just didn't follow through with it. Thank you, Jen.
Sure.
All right. I will slow down. So when it comes to gamification, again, you're talking about the competition, the status that people are earning, all the incentives. And then when you think about what is that going to do to your brain, right? Overall, that's going to have a dopamine release. They're having fun. They're super engaged. It's going to be memorable. People are going to probably want to come back and keep doing it over and over again. It's not often that you give a training session and somebody comes back to you and says, oh my gosh, can I please redo that training? But when it comes to games, because they're so fun, people do tend to want to come back and keep going. All right. Let's get into intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So instructional designers talk about how important this is all the time, right? It's turning those, conversations into, something that people can really think about. How am I going to feel better about this in the end? Is it going to be intrinsic, which is really an incentive to get, through a specific activity just for activity's sake, right? It's not necessarily that you're going to be given some cash or rewards at the end, but it's that feeling, that breaking your personal record that is so exciting about what intrinsic motivation does to you. Then there's extrinsic motivation. So this is the external incentives. This is where certain people really want prizes. I was looking at the leaderboard today inside the ATD app, and I saw people are just going bananas out there, really trying to, touch base with other colleagues or go into presentations and comment and so forth. So the goal is that they're working towards some prize or some final recognition that they're going to achieve. So let's talk about 3 ways that can happen, right? There's solo play. Solo play is the ability for someone to go off and play a game, and that game could be anywhere, right? You can make that game available to them inside your LMS. You can embed a game directly into a course. You can put a game on your website. Wherever they find the game, it's the person being able to go ahead and play that game by themselves. And ultimately, they see their score at the end, and if they didn't do well, then of course they're going to try and beat that score. They're going to go back in and play again and again. Then there's your head-to-head challenges. So this is where you could make things a little bit more fun. Challenge a colleague, challenge your boss, go do a beat the boss challenge, get in there, try and get that leaderboard dominance, play a game, even if it's not at the same time as somebody else, play a game and hopefully that, you're going to achieve a higher score than your opponent. And then team play. This is, of course, the best part. This is when you're collaborating. There's been no, more important time than now to try to collaborate with people, even though you're not face-to-face with them. Get teams together, working together. It's peer motivation, hoping that you can get your team to beat the next team. So now we're going to talk about 8 of the elements. That's what my presentation was called. We're going to talk about 8 different ways to funkify your training. And the first way is through points and leaderboards. And I kind of grouped these two together because they really do go hand in hand. It doesn't have to be just points. You guys could define your currency as whatever it is that you want your people to earn. So I worked with a client, they defined their currency as steps. It could be anything that you're earning. But the idea is that they're earning something for doing each thing that you want them to do. That could be a game. That could be taking a course. It could be watching one of your videos. It could be, completing an assessment or doing interacting with one of your PDFs. But what they're doing is they're earning something for each time that they're, completing an activity. But the goal is that you want to be able to have those points and those leaderboards really tied together. Let them accumulate points across everything that they're doing, just like the ATD app is doing. They can do that individually. They can do it as groups. Ultimately, the happiness is when you go in and you check back on the leaderboard and you see your name in lights, you're climbing the leaderboard. It gets you more motivated to keep coming back regularly. That's the idea behind content, right? And earlier I described to you what's one of the most frustrating things that people find, which is that there's too much content. How do you get people through a lot of content? One way is games, of course. You want them to keep coming back. And the way that they're going to come back is by growing their points, getting higher up on the leaderboard. Eventually the ultimate goal by doing that is not just, hey, let's make our people stop doing their actual work and not be productive. We don't want them playing games all the time. But by letting them play games more than just once until they master the content, it's really allowing that to sink into their long-term memory. Jen, how am I doing? Am I still going too fast? Okay, I'm going to keep going then. Number 2, achievements and badges. So I don't know about you guys, but my husband rides Peloton. I do it very seldomly, but he's on there all the time. My brother's on there all the time. And I know from being a rider that every time you get on there, you're so excited because you're looking at the other people who are riding, you're trying to get higher. It's causing you to actually work a little bit harder to beat your last score, your personal record. And most importantly, there's also those virtual high fives that you can get. It's just a really fun adrenaline rush when you can see an improvement over time, right? Maybe you're getting a badge for coming in 3 days in a row. Maybe you're getting a badge for coming in for your 100th ride, or you're in there for, 4 months in a row. It's really that ultimate goal that's going to help you, keep coming back because you're continuing to earn things over time. And then the head-to-head challenges. We talked about this a little bit before. But you can certainly play a game alone and they're really fun, but why not play with somebody else? Why not challenge them? When you talk about sales training, that most people say, yes, my sales training audience is very competitive. So games work really well. But in general, humans are social. So they want to use games as an element to be connected and constantly kind of collaborating with each other. Games will give you that extra boost. So if you, maybe got challenged by a colleague to play a game with them, you're going to get in there. You want to win and you want to beat them. And then you also can do this in a number of different ways. Those challenges don't have to just be on your own time. They could be on a virtual meeting, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. The idea is to push constantly to keep achieving more. All right, team play. So we touched on this too. I don't know about you guys, but oftentimes when you're really trying to get your audience to understand your business well, a good opportunity is to group people together. Maybe they're from different aspects of your business. Maybe you have someone from sales or marketing or HR or finance team working together to really kind of understand. Maybe it's your customer life cycle. But the idea behind working together is that you're learning from each other. You're teaching each other. There was a stat that I found that was talking about all the different ways that people are trained, between lectures, videos, et cetera. And what we found was that there was a 75 to 90% increase in knowledge retention when it's all about actually teaching each other and collaborating. So that's the goal, right? You want to get people kind of motivated together. You want to celebrate them. If you have the ability to work together and celebrate people or even nudge them, maybe there's someone on your team who just for whatever reason wasn't pulling their weight, to be able to get them to come in there and collaborate with you and kind of give them that extra push that they need to help your team score. Overall, you're hoping, with that extrinsic motivation that your team's going to beat out the other. And hopefully that means not just that you're getting higher up on the leaderboard, but maybe there's a team, prize at the end. All right, so I'm going to ask you guys now to go back over to the poll in our session page and answer the second question. So let me just scooch out of here. Hopefully that's still up. Here we go. The second question was, are you looking for new ways to virtually connect and engage your remote learners? Right now it's at 99% yes. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. See if I can update this, what happens. Okay, I'm not sure if it's just my page not updating, but I'm going to go with 99%. So it seems like most of you are looking for new ways to engage your learners virtually, right? So there's a lot of Zoom calls going on right now. People are spending hours and hours of their time on these video conferences. And, it's getting kind of tiring, right? That you need to find new ways to connect people. So one particular way that we've been able to, help our audience go from a shift of live meeting to virtual meeting is by using what we call our virtual instructor mode. So as I mentioned before, in our Training Arcade platform, we have 9 games, with the 10th game, Wheel of Fortune, coming out soon. But 2 of our games, which are Jeopardy and Trivia, have two modes. They have a single player mode, and then they have what we call virtual instructor mode. Virtual instructor mode is the ability for you to turn your Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams meeting into a much more interactive, engaging session. So what happens there is whoever your meeting facilitator is, they could be the person who's hosting the game, like a la Alex Trebek, right? They actually have a control panel that allows them to control the entire game experience while everybody who's dialing in remotely gets to play. And the one shift that we made in this game, which when we presented to Sony, they loved it, was rather than there being a buzzer, so that only one person buzzes in and gets to answer, we made it so that everybody gets to answer every question. And what's great about that is that the scoring is such that it's not just about getting the question right, it's about speed too. So let's say you had 100 people on a virtual Jeopardy game and 90 of them got a question right. The person who got it right the fastest would be up at the top of the leaderboard. So I might call on, hey, Johnny, great job. You just got that last question right in 2 seconds, faster than everybody else. Go ahead and pick the next category. If any of you were on the last ATD virtual conference back in May, I actually presented Jeopardy and we played through. We had about 200 people playing through the Jeopardy session. It was really fun. If anyone wants to see this in action, I recommend going over to our sponsor page later today. There's a link in there that will allow you to register for a virtual Jeopardy game that we're going to be doing for anyone from the ATD community. Anyone we meet here today, it's on November 19th at 12:30 p.m. And all you have to do is register. And then on that day, you get to play in a fun Jeopardy game. Experience for yourself what it's like. Also experience how you yourselves could run a game like this on your next virtual meeting. There's also a Jeopardy game posted on the sponsor page if you want to get a feel for how to play the game in like a single player experience. So as you can see here in this picture, everybody seems really happy. This was a fun game that we used, just an internal Jeopardy team game that we did. But a lot of our customers who are using it for their actual, virtual training sessions, even a happy hour, an icebreaker, any kind of lunch and learn, just a way to get people really having fun and connecting. Number 5, we're going to talk to you about learning journeys. So it's not a moment in time, right? Learning happens over a period of time. And what you can do in a learning journey is you can create a pathway of different content that you want your learners to have to do in order to kind of, move along the path, right? So maybe the first thing is that you want them to take a course. Maybe the second stop is that you want them to play a Jeopardy game, for example, or maybe you want them to watch a video or look at a PDF. The goal is that you're creating the environment in which you want them to learn. And you can even bring in space learning, right? Space learning is the ability to, kind of repeat the content over time at different intervals so that it really sticks. But you can theme up this entire pathway. Maybe it has to relate to an event that you guys have. Maybe it's your national sales meeting and you want to, create an activity of different content that they have to participate in pre-event, get them excited and ready for the event. Or maybe at the event, there are certain things that you want them to do throughout the experience, or maybe even as pull through. So you can kind of create this learning journey. It doesn't have to be just for a short period of time. It could be kind of ongoing in a structured, gamified curriculum. Maybe there's prizes at the end, maybe there's not, but the ultimate goal is you want to get them to finish and go through everything or keep adding on over time. And then there's mini games. So the idea behind a mini game is to really allow people to take a break. So if any of you have ever played Candy Crush or any of those mobile games, maybe you've played a few days and then you kind of put it down for a while. The next time you go back in, you'll see that there's a fun little mini game to start off your day. It's really just a way to get you excited and having fun. It could be as simple as a spin the wheel, right? Just to earn something to get you going. But the idea is people are busy, let them take breaks, let them kind of decompress for a little bit because of all the noise that's going on out in the world, and let them have a little bit of fun and potentially earn something, whether it's tangible or not. Prizing. So, we all know that cash is king. Obviously, everybody likes cash, but other people are motivated by different things. You may want to actually have lunch or dinner with the boss, or you want to go on a trip or have an extra day of vacation or a gift card. There's a lot of different types of prizing that will motivate people. You can set goals too. It doesn't necessarily have to be, let's only give a prize at the end or the person who hit the top of the leaderboard. There's a lot of different ways you can bring prizing in. There can be milestones that you set for people to achieve over time. We did a program with a pharmaceutical client where they were having a national sales meeting last December. And for 2 months leading up to the national sales meeting, they had their 200 sales reps constantly playing games and competing. But rather than waiting until the meeting, they were rewarding them along the way. Every week or so, they would look at the leaderboard and they would identify who had hit different milestones, and they'd be able to pick from a list of prizes. So that's one way you could do it. Then what they did is at the actual sales meeting, the 3 people who were at the top of the leaderboard, they called up on stage and they gave them recognition in front of their peers and give them some bigger prizes like a touchscreen TV and some Bose headphones. So there's a lot of different ways that you could do that, both individually or through groups. Maybe you want to give group prizes. Maybe you want to, be able to reward people just for their participation. But you can also think about using games and prizing in different ways, like a tournament style, for example, or in brackets. So one example I can share is a few months ago, we did a program with AARP. They had 105,000 people come in to play a Jeopardy game through this competition. So what they did is they posted a Jeopardy game on Monday, another one on Tuesday, another one Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And over the course of those first 5 days, people could play as many different games as they wanted to. But at the very end of the 5th day, the 30 people who were at the top of the leaderboard for each of the 5 days then competed in a final Jeopardy competition to win some prizes. So you had 150 people competing. So that's one way. Or you could do it more bracket style, like the NCAA, right? So where you start off with maybe everybody in your organization gets to play the first game, but then maybe only X amount of, the top people on the leaderboard get to participate in round 2. And then maybe the top 3 get to participate in round 3 while everybody else is watching. So there's a lot of fun ways that you can do it. You can, don't think about it as just rewarding someone at the end. Think about giving those little pieces of recognition in the form of prizes as they participate through your training. All right, now we're going to talk about data. Data is so key, right? It's not just about, hey, let's, take this compliance training and at the end, click a button, check a box that you did it, right? That's the worst thing that can happen. What you really want to make sure is, did my training work? How effective was it? What worked, what didn't work? So when you're looking at data, at least in our platform, we capture a lot of robust data. How many times did someone play? How long was their game experience? Did you see an impact of their performance over time? How did they do the first time, to the second time, to the third time? Which questions specifically did they get right or wrong? And where are the biggest gaps? And when you're looking at it from an aggregate perspective, you want to be able to understand, did this work? What parts were most missed? So let's just say, for example, that you had a virtual training call that was about 2 hours long. And at the end, you said, you know what, guys, we're going to play a fun game now. They play the game, maybe it's a 5 or 10 minute experience. And then you say, go take a 5-minute coffee break. While they're out taking their break, you can be looking at the data. And when they come back in, you can then share the data. It's all real time. So you could say something like, you know what? We just looked at the data. This seemed to be work really well. Let's move on to the next topic. Or, you know what, guys? We noticed that there were a few questions that too many of you missed. Maybe 70% or more of you missed this question and so forth. So the data is going to really shine a light on where the biggest gaps are. It's going to show you your successes, but it's also going to show you where you might need to go back and reteach. I want to share this information from a 1,000 game study that we did. So what we found was that there was a 64% lift in knowledge retention from the first time someone played a game to the third time. And what was happening was that they were staying in on about 6 minutes per session, but they were coming back on their own free will 2.9 times, which is about 18 minutes. So earlier in this presentation, I mentioned that, you don't always hear people wanting to take your training over and over again, but because games are fun and because people can actually see how they're doing with the leaderboard at the end of a game, and maybe they're not happy with their score, they're going to have that, replayability factor. They're going to go in and they're going to try again. They're going to try harder and, kind of ultimately get to a better place where they're mastering your content, which is the ultimate goal. So right after this slide, I am going to move on to actually show you guys a live gamification visual so that you can really put all the things I've just been talking about into perspective. Jen or Joanne, right after I go through this slide, I'm going to pause and see if we can answer some questions verbally. But before I do that, I just want to talk about tailoring your approach, just kind of like as a summary, right? Once you've developed games, you really need to kind of look back and see what resonated the most with my audience. Something that I've found some of our subscribers are doing, and it's really effective, is taking the game content that you've built, and rather than just putting it in one style of game, put that same content into a few different styles of game and give your learners a choice of which game type they may want to use. Because what you might find may be different than what you thought. You may find that people really want to play a simple trivia game, or you may think that, you're finding that the problem solving or the really kind of, thought that goes into decision making in a scenarios game is something that they want more. So tailoring your approach to, kind of up that engagement, because if you're providing them with a game type that they want to be using, then there's a good chance that what you're presenting to them is going to really work. And you're going to be able to cover up on those gaps. So I'm going to scooch on over from this deck to give you guys some visuals, but let's take some questions, Jen or Joanne.
Okay, we have a lot. A lot of people are very interested in this topic, which is awesome.
Great.
One question that I saw come up a couple of times in different ways is, how do you convince leaders that gamification can be a legitimate learning module, or that it's not fluff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times when I talk to companies who are thinking about using games, I think the biggest thing that they're worried about is, well, what if my audience doesn't like games, and how am I going to get my leadership to understand that games can be effective? So what I say is take baby steps, right? Game development can be expensive. So instead of starting with a giant game, building out this huge simulation, don't go there yet, right? Use simpler games or little gamification tactics to first see if that resonates well with your audience. Because what'll happen is you'll let them play games, and with the data that you'll be able to, collect, you'll see if it's effective. And then you can go back to your management team and say, look at this, look at what happened here. We really can prove to you that there was a difference in, how someone performed before they played the game to after they played the game. Or even better, if you have time, you can really look at the data by each person and see how that affected their productivity. So if you're talking about a salesperson, for example, you might be able to attribute their stats from a game they played to how they performed on a job, over the next month or two. So hopefully that answered somebody's question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, and there was a couple other comments about sales-driven companies. Several people recognize that gamification is great for sales-driven companies, certainly, but then there were a few that didn't really know how to get sales-driven companies to slow down and be less focused on the content, but really establish a gamification program. So I was wondering if you had any examples of companies that do train with games, train their sales team with games.
Yeah, actually, a lot of our clients are using games specifically for sales training. So we work in all industries, but we have a big focus on pharma and healthcare, on the financial industry, bankers and advisors, on large tech clients. But ultimately what I'm finding is that a good portion of the people who are using games are using it specifically for sales. And again, you have to think about what's the right game for them, right? It may not be a straight up fact, trivia style game. It may be more decision making. That's like role play. Create an environment where maybe it's like a choose your own adventure or a role play. So I'll give you guys an example. We had a pharmaceutical client. It was, I think, 2 years ago. They were having their big national sales meeting. Leading up to the sales meeting, they really wanted a way to get people comfortable with being able to communicate. So at the sales meeting, they were going to have them have to role play in front of their supervisors. And a lot of them were petrified. Even though they're sales, it's still kind of unnerving when you have to do it, in front of your supervisor. So what we did is we created a scenarios game with the exact content that they would have to do in front of their supervisors, but we sent it out to them to do on their own. Let them kind of have a virtual conversation with a virtual person within the game, get them comfortable understanding that, oh my gosh, that was not the right answer, but it's okay because I could go back and try with this different answer. And because they really got to practice virtually, when they went ahead and were doing this in front of their boss, they were able to feel way more comfortable. And I think that is, kind of carries through anything. A lot of times people are taking, are out of their comfort zone, but when they can practice, especially in an environment that you can fail safely in, then it really can drive. So I don't know if that answered specifically what they were asking in the chat, Jen, but I'm hoping that helped a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Joanne, did you have some that you wanted to share?
Yeah, someone had asked about like the learning objectives for our games and what learning objectives and games work best with technical training, possibly.
Yeah, that's great. So there's a number of different game types. So I would say that when it comes to technical training, you're probably looking at, games that can visually show your products, right? So if it's like, hey, how does this turbine work? Or, how do I know what the next step in the process is if I'm, looking through this medical system? So we have like hospitals actually who train their entire staff, their doctors, their nurses, their social workers, everybody on their medical record system, so there are a lot of games that can be suitable, but there are certain games that probably like a decision-making game isn't what you want because it's more factual training. So something like a trivia or, maybe what you're trying to train them on is definitions or acronyms or some really important, definitions that relate to your business. So you can use a game like Scramble perhaps, but there are a number of different ones. And I do encourage all of you, we offer a free trial of the Training Arcade. It's 30 days. There's a link on our sponsor page where you can go to that will let you go and sign up. And it'll give you an opportunity to actually mess around with the platform. You can build out your own sample games. You could test with the team. There's also samples of each of the games on the trainingarcade.com, which will allow you to kind of get a feel for how the different games work. So, but I will say that please come to us because one of the things that we provide is, we want to get all of our customers off to a good start because sometimes they don't necessarily have the time or they're to think through what's the best mechanic. So we will often give you kind of our thoughts on this game is best used for this type of use. This game is best used for this. And then, it at least is a guide to help you figure that out. Any other questions, you guys?
I think you're good for now. Maybe we can come back to it after you do the demo.
All right, perfect. So I am now showing you guys a visual of what gamification could look like. This is what we call arcades. It's a feature set that exists inside the Training Arcade. But as I mentioned before, you can have your games and you can distribute games anywhere. You can easily make them available as a SCORM package downloaded and put into your LMS, or you could bake it into a course, or you could email game links to people and make it really easy. But what if you said to me, you know what, we want to take a variety of different games and other activities and place them in one destination where people can earn points and drive their leaderboard score over time. So everything I've been talking about for the last roughly an hour is this in a visual way. So what you're looking at here is a game destination spot. So you could house a number of different games. You could put even your own SCORM packages, like a storyline course, for example, in here. You could put in a video or maybe a PDF. And ultimately, people are going to be earning points across everything they do. So you could put your logo up here. You could change out your little, every day a learner could come in and they can have a little bit of fun. So I'm just going to pick, maybe today I'll be this little dog. So here's my avatar for the day. I could see that I'm at level 6. This progress bar here, this is really helping me understand how I'm doing, right? I'm at about 75% overall accuracy across everything I'm doing. I've earned 2236 XP, that's experience points. And I'll tell you how I earn that. I've won one challenge so far. That's a head-to-head challenge. This is my latest achievement. Let's see what it says. Logged in on a weekend. Okay, I logged in yesterday, so it gave me the achievement for coming in on a weekend. I've played 3 games. This is showing my leaderboard status overall. So you could see that I'm in position 3 right now. But how do you earn those points? So one way you could earn points is you could click on a game and you could play it as a solo experience, like I was saying before. So I could click this button and the game would launch and let me play it by myself, and I can earn points for playing it. Or I could do something even more fun, take it to the next level. I could click challenge. So this could be a list of hundreds or thousands of employees in your organization where you could scroll through and you could pick on a certain person. So Joanne's online today. Joanne, I'm going to pick on you. So let's say I challenge Joanne to play a game against me. What'll happen next is I click play, and then the game will launch. It'll let me play the game right then and there by myself. Joanne's not actually playing with me at this moment in time. I'm playing alone, but then Joanne, you'll see if I click out of here, Joanne now has a pending notification waiting for her. She now knows that I've challenged her. And when she logs in up here in the top notification section, she'll see other challenges that are waiting for her. So that's one way that you can also earn points. Now I'm going to click on, I was logged out of that. I'm going to click on this is a different dashboard. As you can see, I'm at 0%. So the reason why I'm showing you this dashboard is because I want to show you what a team game looks like. So in this dashboard, we've got a variety of different game types. We've got single player games that look like this. This is like a single player detective game or a team detective game. And the reason why you know it's a team game is because it has a versus. So let's say I wanted to play a team Jeopardy game. I can click on that, and then I can choose a team that I want to play part of. So you can preset this. When you're building games or building arcades in our platform, you decide what you want to do. So in this case, I decided to create these 5 teams, and I would pick one, and then I would go ahead and play. And then my score will count towards the team score. There are features too, like being able to nudge players on your team. So let's say you notice someone on your team was not doing well, or they weren't coming in often enough to kind of help your team score. You'll be able to nudge them. You can also celebrate people, get them excited, make them feel good about how they're doing. And then there's also the learning journey aspect I was talking about before, where you could take the different elements that you've built into an arcade, and you can define the path that people need to do them. You know, again, it could be a course first, maybe then it's a game, maybe then it's a video, maybe then it's another game. So there's a lot of different ways that you can define that. And then you can also set your pricing. So you'll have the ability in the back end of the platform to figure out, you know, what milestones do I want my people to achieve in order to, you know, earn those prizes. And then I also mentioned on one of my 8 features of gamification is mini games. So you could click on once a day, you'd be presented with this like spin the win wheel. And let's see what I got today since I haven't been in. All right, well, guess what? I didn't earn a prize today. Too bad, sorry, better luck next time. If I had, it would have moved my level a little bit, given me a little bit of XP. And it's really just a way to drive that kind of, you know, excitement that you're looking for. You know, there's a few different ways that your employees can access an arcade. So first and foremost, you could download this entire arcade as a SCORM package. You could do individual game downloads as a SCORM and put it in your LMS, or you could create an entire arcade and SCORM wrap it and put it in your LMS. Or you could do direct registration, where your you know, all your employees who want to access an arcade can come in and they can, you know, create their own username and password and log in. You'll also have the ability to do different arcades. So let's say you wanted an arcade just for new hires, where, you know, the new people that you're bringing into your organization, you create an arcade with games filled with information that only new hires need to know. And then those new hires can compete against each other. Maybe you want a separate arcade just for your sales team. And then maybe you want a separate arcade for your management, your leadership. So you can do a lot of fun things with this, you know, additional gamification layer. And now I just want to quickly show you how you could also brand it. So this is an example of a branded, you know, this is what it normally looks like, but if you wanted to put your own touch on it, you can. So I created this with one of our clients' logos. I changed the look and feel of the colors. I also put in a background image. So you can see this really dramatically changed what the look of the arcade does, and it's super easy to do. So now I'm going to quickly show you guys how that works. All right, let's log in here real quick. Okay. So some of you may have seen this. If you decide that you want to set up a free trial, you will also see what the back end of the platform looks like. But what you do is you go into a game, and then let's just say Jeopardy, for example. If I click Jeopardy, I click on Jeopardy. The first thing it's going to ask me is, do I want this to be a single player game, or am I going to use this on an instructor-led course? You name your game. You set timers for your questions. You decide if you want to pass, fail. There's lots of settings. You can put some messaging at the beginning of the game to kind of set the stage for what the learner's about to experience. You can do user registration if you want, where you can collect certain information about the learner so that it'll populate the analytics. So you can go back later and really understand, you know, how everybody did. Or if you didn't want, you know, if the game was going to be made available in your LMS, you don't even need to turn that on. And then of course you can decide, do I want to turn the leaderboard on the game over screen so people can see what they do? Okay, great. So that's how you build a game. There's a lot more to it, and I'm happy to show you guys later, but I wasn't planning on really getting too deep into that today. I wanted to really show you how quickly and easy you can build an arcade. So what you do for an arcade is you click on arcades, and then you click on new arcade. And then again, you name your arcade. Everything in our platform is web-based, which means the games can be played on absolutely any device, and even the arcade is all web-based too. So you name your arcade, it populates into this URL here. You decide what kind of authorization type you want. If you want single sign-on, you could do that. If you want direct registration, learners can do that too. That's how you kind of set it up. And then let me just go into an arcade that's already done to show you some of the other features. So let's talk about the themes. I just showed you an example of what this looks like, which is a themed arcade. So you could choose from a couple different color schemes, or you could even do some custom, using your own team's Pantone colors or whatnot. You can load in a background image, you can load in your logo, and that's all it takes to customize. Now, how do you add games to an arcade? So the first thing you would do is you would actually, you would build your games, right? Once your games are built, then you would be able to scroll through a list of different arcades. And for some reason, this isn't loading for me. It could be because I have too many tabs open. But you would scroll through the different games that you built, and then you would click add. And any of the games that you add to your arcade would automatically be added. So you could see in this one, we only have 2 games listed here. You could see in this one, we have lots of different games. So you would pre-build the games, and then you would go into arcades. Now, let's talk about data also for a second, because we touched on this before. Hang on one second. I'm going to go into, I was showing you guys earlier how important data is. So now I'm going to actually show you what you see when you look inside of the data inside of the back end of the platform. So the first thing it's going to do is you find the game you want to look at, and then you have to figure out what time frame you want to look at. So you can look at data by day or week or month or year. Let's look at all-time data. So you can download this, of course. It'll download you a nice CSV file, and then you can mess around and make your little pivot tables and so forth. The top here is going to give you some pretty graphs, your overall player trends, how many people played the game, average score, total sessions, average accuracy, which is super key. And then you can get into your individual players. Hundreds or thousands of people who are playing the game, you want to see how each of them did. In this particular game, we collected only initials, so that's all you see in the dashboard. But if you had asked them to put in more information like their email, their first name, last name, maybe what country they're in, what city, what department, what specialty, what team they're on, there would be additional columns here. And then you could sort by all these columns. And if I wanted to, I could click into an individual person. So this person with the initials SRL, they played the most amount of time. So let's see what they did. I can see here their high score, total sessions, average session duration, the dates and times they played, the number of questions they were asked, and their accuracy. You could see here, this person started off at 30% accuracy. By the time they hit the 6th time playing, they were at 100%. But even by the 3rd time, they were 80%. So again, that plays into the ability for people to fail safely and keep coming back to improve their score. And then if you want to dig in further, you can say, well, I want to actually know which questions specifically they got right and wrong. So this is where you kind of look at the data in that regard. The first time this person played, you could see a lot of red X's here. They didn't do so well. By the 2nd time, you could see a little bit of an improvement. By the 3rd time, even better. They're getting closer to mastering the content. So that's how you would look at data on an individual game. But let's go back and look at the data on an individual arcade. So I'm just going to click back into that arcade, and I'm going to click into activities. Now, this is probably not a great example because nobody played inside this arcade yet. You can see there's 0% here. But just to give you guys an idea of what you can look at. So if you click on overview, this is going to show you how many people played, their XP they earned, how many sessions, challenges, average time spent, and their accuracy. And then if you click into players, it'll show you the player, their email, their rank, what level they're at, the XP they've earned, and so forth. And you can export, of course, all the player and session data. And then if you want to look at it by activity, so let's say you had a SCORM package, some sort of course in there, and a PDF, and lots and lots of games. Each of those activities would be listed here. You'd see what kind of activity they were. You'd see how many sessions for each activity were played, how many players, the average accuracy, and the average time spent. So again, this is super important when it comes to, how are you, going to take gamification and all of that to the next level. So Jen and Joanne, any questions I can answer at this moment?
Actually, yes, Jamie. There's one someone had asked, how do you differentiate game-based or gamified learning to make them appropriate for different professional levels? For example, entry level versus senior management.
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, going back to the idea of understanding who your audience is, you probably want to present different game types with different content to those different people. So if you've got entry level people and you're trying to really just kind of initiate them into your business, you may want to choose a game type that's, simpler, that's more factual, that's more like a trivia game. And then it depends if the next goal is that you're talking about leadership, or maybe you're talking about physicians. We work a lot with healthcare. And oftentimes when we're creating a game for a particular healthcare company, they'll bring in their SMEs, right? Their subject matter experts are the physicians. So oftentimes they'll have people who are kind of the ones saying, I'm going to help you create this content. And a lot of times they build and create their own content. And then they're just using our game as the vehicle to deliver that content out. But it really depends. You have to think through, it's not just about what is the content, it's what is the objective that you're hoping to get out of this. If you're really trying to change someone's behavior perhaps, or is it just, I'm simply trying to make sure that this content is sticky. So you kind of need to think about it from the overall perspective. Hopefully that helped, Joanne.
And we had a question a while back about what's the best way to incorporate games into existing content. And I'm assuming they might be referring to PowerPoint or maybe other e-learning tools.
Yeah, so I can talk from the perspective of some of the tactics that we take. A lot of people, PowerPoint's not going away, right? There are so many tools out there that can make training exciting, but PowerPoint, while it can be something that is used too often, it's still here to stay. So you can easily take a game and just embed it directly into a PowerPoint as a link. At least our games are web-based games. Not all games are web-based games, but if you want to, drop a link to a game into a PowerPoint, or if you're building out a course, let's say using like Captivate or Lectora or Storyline or any of those e-learning authoring tools, you can simply take the game link you've created and embed it as a web object. And then when that person gets to that part of the course, they can simply just click the link and the game will launch inside the course for them to play. So it's an overall experience where the game is in there. Another way to do it is to think about your content from the perspective of, maybe you have a meeting coming up. Maybe it's your annual meeting or a sales training meeting or something. And it's not just about what am I going to do at that meeting to make sure the content sticks and engage people. It's thinking through what's going to happen before the event and what's going to happen after the event too. So you can think through, how am I going to push that content out to learners as kind of pre-work, right? Let them get involved with the content, make sure that they're up to speed on what's about to happen at the event so that you don't even have to cover up on the initial information when they get there. Then when they get there, you can dig in deep into your content, make sure that they know it, add a little games throughout the game experience, whether it's, it could be a half-a-day event, a one-day event, two-day event, sprinkle games in throughout, look at the data, as you're going, maybe even reward prizes at the end. But then think about pull through too, right? After the training happens, it's so important to make sure that content is fresh in their minds a week later, a month later, 2 months later. And a game's a good vehicle to deliver that. You can say, hey guys, remember that meeting that we were at 2 months ago? Well, here's the game. We want to make sure that that this information is still, sticking in your brain. What other questions can I answer, Jen?
There have been a couple questions about which games, I know it's kind of getting off the topic of arcades, but which games are good for behavioral change, soft skills, I saw compliance, and sexual harassment.
Yes, absolutely. So one of my favorite games, actually, I'll show you, is a game that we built. Oops, I didn't spell that right. It's a scenarios game. I was talking about scenarios a little bit earlier. Oh my God, I can't spell today. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So this is a game that was all about pharmaceutical sales training. So the ultimate goal is that you're a pharmaceutical rep. You have a brand new drug that you want to sell to the doctor's office. Your ultimate goal is to get in there and see Dr. Raymond, but you're greeted first by this nurse, and the nurse is just kind of shoving you off. She's like, hey guys, we're too busy here. Sorry, don't have time to chat. Just leave me your card. And so, you don't want to walk away. You want to try and figure out what's the best way for me to communicate with this nurse to convince her that I have something important to share with the doctor and ultimately get in there. And so in this case, and I'm not going to show you guys this whole thing. I'll just kind of skip through here, but there's a few cool features I was mentioning before. In the world of negotiating, there's a really, really good answer. And then there's sometimes really bad answer. Maybe it's just, definitely not the way people should be looking at things. And then there's somewhere in between. So when you're building a game, you could think through, how do I assign point values to that? Maybe I give 500 points to the best answer. Maybe I give 0 or negative points to the worst answer or somewhere in between. And then you've got something like this meter here, which is the ability for you to kind of label the right and left side of the meter. And when someone plays through the game experience, it's giving them an indication of how they're doing. So again, this is reinforcing decision-making and hopefully behavior changes, because if they see that they're kind of going in the wrong direction, they're going to switch their behavior. And the goal is to turn them back around. So I know you guys can't hear this, but this is kind of the beginning of this game. You are the farmer rep. You're presented with this video. This nurse is telling you, "Hey, it's so nice to meet you. Don't have time to chat." And so now what happens is you're asked your first question: what's the most effective response to kind of move this, to move her, in a different direction to get her to want to see me? So let's say I click that one. All right, I got some points for it. Wasn't the best answer though. She, isn't really happy. She's like, "Look, like I said, I don't have time to chat." And so even though it was a mediocre answer, it wasn't enough to move the needle in the direction that you want. So what we did in this particular game is we said, let's take this person back to try again, give them another chance. So in this case, great, now I got it right. You'll see I only got 50 points there because I didn't get it right the first time. So you really can kind of assign it that way. And now she's saying, okay, that's interesting. I don't have a lot of time, but I'm willing to listen to you. So you're making some headway, and it's changing. You have to really think through the process of what you're going to say in order to get her to want to let you in, but ultimately making those right choices or seeing the repercussions of making wrong choices. Hopefully that helped, Jen. And again, you guys are all welcome to visit it if you want to see more different choice, different styles of games. Please feel free to reach out to anyone on our team. You can also go to our website. It has a bunch of different game samples on there, so you can kind of demo what how a game works and see how you might think through your content mapping to one of those game mechanics. Jen, Joanne?
I think we're good. Joanne, do you have any additional questions? You've been answering a lot of them in the chat.
Okay, good. Well, I wanted to leave you guys with this last piece here. So here's my contact information, but I do so appreciate you all coming today. I love games. My team is super passionate about games and gamification, so please come talk to us at any point. On our sponsor page, there is a session evaluation. We'd love to hear your feedback. Again, you can sign up to register for that Jeopardy virtual game that we're going to be hosting on November 19th. You can check out some other games. We're also giving away a prize. Every day, Jen is going to post a Jeopardy game that you guys could play, and whoever is at the top of the leaderboard by 8 p.m. Pacific time every day is going to win a $25 Amazon gift card. So of course we had to gamify this presentation too, right? So go there, please fill out the polls. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback. And I just appreciate you all being here today. Thanks so much. Oh, and at 4:15 today, Eastern, we are doing a Q&A on this session. So come back to that later if you have more questions that you think of, because we'll be there for about 30 minutes answering questions. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Hope you all have a good rest of the conference and enjoy the rest of the sessions.